Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 297 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is success, not perfection. Our quote of the day comes to us from Bill Phillips: focus on progress, not perfection. Before we jump into today's episode, I would like to personally thank everybody that has purchased a copy of our new book, The Positivity Tribe. We truly appreciate your help in spreading positivity. And for those that are interested in supporting our mission, you can grab yourself a copy over at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or wherever books are sold. I had a blast recording today's episode. Ironically, a few years ago, when I was just getting started with my professional speaking career, one evening, Victor Antonio gave me an hour and 15 minutes of his time, which truly helped me. Talk about we rise by lifting others up. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Victor, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
At least. Minimum. More than that. Minimum.
I love it. That's the whole thing. Is we all do one, compound that, we've had a great day. The number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you yourself have either a no-quit story or perhaps a challenging time in your personal or professional life where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
I remember when I started my speaking career. We all have several of them, right? But one that always just kind of stands out is I remember I quit my job, May 9th, 2001, 3:48 p.m. to be exact. I decided to leave corporate America, do my own thing, as I say. And I remember I started my speaking career. And so June 1st, 2001, started my speaking career. And at the end of the year, I made a whopping $17,000. That's 17, not 7017. And I'm like, not good. This is not good. And so for the next year or so, again, struggled. Next year, I think I made 56,000. And I was like, this is not where I was, financially. And so, or where I wanted to be. And I remember I was driving to Orlando, Florida from Miami. And I was having one of those moments, Chris, where I'm driving, right? And I remember Stephen Covey's book. And I tell a story all this time because that book impacted me even as 30 years ago. And he had the circle of influence. There's things you can control, and there's things you can't. Let's focus on the things we can control, right? And I said, man, I can't control how people, whether they're going to book me or not. It's hard to control how much they pay me. I can demand it, but I can't really control that. And then I said, what can I control? Because that's a great question to ask yourself. What can I control? Besides your attitude, besides your activities, what can you control? And what came back like really loud was, have fun with this thing. Do it your way. Have fun with it. Do it your way. And I remember as I got to, it was Valencia College. And I remember right before I took the stage, Chris, I was scared, brother, because I was about to just reveal me. You know what I mean? I've gone through Toastmasters. I learned from the best speakers how to present, how to do it the right way. But I was going to let go of all that. Structure be damned. We're doing it Vic's way, right? And I was scared. And I remember I finished that presentation and I got a standing ovation, no joke. And I had so much fun doing it. And that day was so pivotal for me. Because after that, it didn't happen immediately, but I can tell that there was something there in how I was doing it. And then my career just started growing from there.
I appreciate you sharing that backstory, and something we often talk about is controlling the controllables, and obviously fits in with what you said is what can I control? And I think so many of us focus, myself included, on those things that you can't control, those outside things, as opposed to those internal things, your decisions, your choices, what you're thinking, what you say to yourself. So I appreciate you touching that. Wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
A little background is originally my family's from Puerto Rico originally, but I was born and raised in Chicago. So we were raised in the inner city, like we were talking food stamps, government cheese, and powdered milk. We were poor. And mom said, get the education, get the job. That's how you make it in the American dream, all that wonderful stuff. So I got a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, an MBA. Started out as an engineer, designing wireless systems in the telecom industry, and then realized salespeople made more money. And since I'm a capitalist, you know this, Chris, I said, maybe I'll move into sales, use my technical abilities. And the way it happened was an opportunity in Latin America opened up. So I said, hey, we're looking for a technical person who wants to sell and speak Spanish. Interested? I said, yes. Is there more money? They said, yes. I said, I'm in. And that's how I began my career in sales. And so fast forward, when I quit my job, in the story I just told you about, by that time, really fast forward, I was president of sales and marketing. It was a $420 million company. And so I was making my base salary, this is not bragging, just to give everybody a sense of how big that decision was to quit. My base salary itself was $250,000. Commission, stock options on top of that, you can well imagine, it's a lot of money. And so to go from that number to $17,000 a year, you really had to want to do it. But I really wanted to do it, Chris, because I had this, I call it a quiet discontent. And it's that inner voice inside of you that says, dude, you're just not doing what you want to do. You know what I mean? And it's something that just stirs there. It's like a hobgoblin of the mind type of thing. It just says, nah, it's not what you want to do. It's not really what you want to do. And then I don't know what happened, but over time, I just finally said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And it was a hard decision, Chris. It was hard. It was scary. And even when I think back, I go, you actually did that. Yeah, I'm surprised that I did it. But I knew that I couldn't do what I was doing already. Do you know how you get to a point where you just can't do that anymore? And you just have to make a whole new decision. And that was hard because when I quit, I was giving up my engineering/MBA identity. And now I had to create a whole new identity. And that was really hard.
So I have to ask is what was the most difficult time going from that large salary down to 17,000? Obviously you shared your joy and passion, but what was the most difficult time during that? And then follow-up question is, how did you stay focused and motivated knowing that A, you could do it, and B, you had the determination inside of you?
I think I mentally, because of this quiet discontent, mentally, mindset-wise, I had burned the boats. I had done that Hernan Cortez thing, burned the boats, we ain't going back, only one way to go. So mentally, I had burned the boats, burned the bridge, take your analogy or metaphor. And I knew I didn't want to go back to that. That was the thing that kept pushing me forward. I didn't want to do that anymore. And so, when I only made $17,000, I'm like, oh man. And I remember I went to see a guy, his name is Randy Gage. He's a speaker, does a lot of multi-level marketing. And I remember I went to one of his workshops in Florida, and I made sure to sit next to him during lunch. And he doesn't remember this, but I do remember. This was like a moment for me. And I remember I was whining. I had my violin out about how things weren't going well. I knew I was so good. I knew I'm so brilliant, but yet nobody recognizes my genius. That type of thing, Chris, right? And then he looks at me, he says, Victor, let me ask you a question. Now, for the audience listening, when somebody says, let me ask you a question, I can guarantee you it's not going to go your way, right? So he goes, let me ask you a question. So I said, what's your question? He goes, Victor, what business are you in? I said, speaking business. He says, no, what business are you in? I said, okay, the speaking, the business, speaking, coaching. He says, no, what business are you in? I was like, workshop business? No. He said, I said, consulting business. No. Author? No. And I said, all right, fine. You just get sick of somebody else. Tell me what business I'm in. Tell me what business I'm in. Oh, wise one, right? Just with an attitude. He goes, and this changed my life. He said, you're in the marketing business first, speaker second. And you know how when you hear something, Chris, and you don't want to hear it, your immediate reaction is like, screw you. You don't understand. You don't understand what I'm going through right now. But the more it sits there, it just starts working its way up to, it moves away from the emotional and starts hitting the logical part of your brain. And you go, I think he's right. I think he's right. And that was the beginning of, I got to do marketing. I got to get better at marketing. I got to get better at creating content. And then fast forward a year or two somewhere, and I can't remember, exactly. But then I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It. And Gary was doing Wine Library TV, and he was all about video, Victor. Video, man. You got to go video, all in with video. And I remember reading that book and going, I was looking at my competition. You look at the landscape and who your competitors are. And I took that Sun Tzu approach, which is, attack your enemy where they're weakest And everybody had books already. People were syndicated in magazines or in articles, and I couldn't get it. They got blocked. They got all this following. I couldn't do any of that. But I knew many of them didn't have video. So I said, that's the point of weakness right there. So man, I just went on this rant I should say this pace of creating videos 3 times a week, which I've been on, by the way, since then. Around 2008 is when I started doing the videos a lot. And I think I have over like 1,200 videos just on YouTube. My Sales Velocity Academy has another 500. So I'm that guy. I'm like that guy that's creating content, and that's how I generated noise. And that began the process of, it did 2 things for me, Chris. When you got to create new content and be different, it forces you to up your game a little bit, right? Adopting, learning, upping, adopting and learning, upping your game, finding new ways to create video, get the message out. But it also started attracting a lot of people. And so today on my YouTube channel, we have almost like 200,000 subscribers because of that. And so it's been like that constant, I think that's the toughest part, is that you almost have to have this faith. It's almost like a leap of faith, because you say, I don't know if this is going to work, but I have no other alternatives. Let me go all in on the videos, right? And then the last 2-3 years, we've been doing podcasts, and that's going exceptionally well, like this podcast, that's going well. And that just creates more, you know what I mean? Positions me more as an expert. People know me more, and people find me, just like you did.
I'm really glad you shared that. And I think the one thing you took from the Gary Vee perspective is today we have access to more information than we've ever had, whether it's videos, podcasts, whether they're programs, ebooks, courses, virtual or in person. But the one thing that you said really stood out to me is you took what Gary said, or Gary wrote in his book, to heart, and you went ahead and you took that action. I find so many people, it's paralysis by overanalysis. They overthink it. They know they need to do it, but then it's almost like they get in their mind that they can't do it, and they end up not doing it. And I think what you said best, and what Randy Gage said to you, is you are in marketing first. You're advertising, PR. You have to get your fill in the blank out there: message, podcast, book. So I'm really glad that you shared that, because that's something that we often talk about with No Quit Living, is going ahead and taking action. You need to, whatever it is you want to do, whether it's something you want to improve, start, get into a different industry, you have to ultimately take that action. So I'm really glad that you shared that perspective with us. A question we ask.
Chris,
go ahead.
Can I tag something on? I just want to tag out, because this is important. And so I live by this mantra. I truly live by this mantra that never aim for perfection, aim for success. And that really ties in what you're saying, is that, and that's my mantra. I never try to create the perfect video. Never happens. When I write my books, I'm on book number 14. Trust me, there's people who can write better than me. Don't care. Is it 80% good? It's 80% good, right? I can figure out, I can fine tune 20 later. But too often people get in their heads so much, well, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way that came out. I don't like the way that sounded. What's funny is that I create content. Like I said, I'm a machine at this. And I remember a few years ago, you could actually find the video, know exactly when. I was creating video, and I'm like, you ever create something, Chris? And you're like, oh yeah, this right here is pure gold. This is unadulterated. This is like diamond level. Once this content hits the internet, it's going to take off. And then nothing, right? And then I remember one day I needed to post something, and I didn't have anything to post. So I did this, I went to the studio, just did this little 15-minute rant about sales. And it didn't mean to be 15. I just wanted to do a simple rant that turned into 15 minutes about sales excellence, right? And how to become a great sales. If you type in Victor Antonio sales excellence, you'll find it. And that video, which I just kind of threw up like, whatever, just throw that up there, has like 1.6, 1.7 million views. That video has gotten me so much business. It isn't even funny. And it was just a rant that I didn't even like that much, but I just put it up there and if you see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Just me going in the studio, let's talk. And
I'm going to take a look at it after.
Yeah, that was a moment for me.
But you shared something too right there that has a lot of connotation in it, is sometimes we put out great stuff and it's just the wrong time. And what I mean by that, and I talk to people all the time, is you got to stop, and myself included, I'm sure you do it as well at times, is comparing yourself to others, whether it's followers, views, downloads, subscribers. Of course you want to be successful, but sometimes something that's really good just doesn't get out there at the right time. And that's something that we always talk about, is just staying with it. And obviously the whole no quit mentality and our no quit approach is just continue to go and you don't ever quit.
I was watching a Simon Sinek video, the guy who wrote Start With Why. He wrote a book called Infinite Games, right? And then he was talking about the infinite game mindset. An infinite game, by the way, finite game is that you think it's about winning or losing. The infinite game mindset is about you're always in the game. It's never about who wins, who loses. It's about who's still in the game, right? And he said something interesting. He says, I don't have competitors, but I like to have rivals. And I was like, well, what's the difference there, right? Immediately, what's the difference? Competitors is where you compare yourself, right? You're always trying to beat them. He says, no, I have rivals. These are people who I look at who are doing things and they're highlighting my shortfalls where I'm not working on something. And I don't like them, he said, being facetious, because they remind me of what I'm not good at, but they also highlight what I need to work on. And I just love that mindset because I'm not worried about competition. I'm not trying to compare myself. If I see Chris Worth doing something, I'm like, man, how did he do that? I got to do something like that. That's a totally different mindset. Then they're like, fearing the competition, comparing. I'm not as good as Chris, therefore I could never do something like that. To me, I'm like, that's how he did it. How could I do it, if not at that level, just a little better? And that's a totally different mind shift. It's a more positive mind shift.
That's such a different way to approach things, and I think hopefully our listeners got a lot out of that last thing you said, and it's the not looking at it as competitors, but looking at it as rivals, but also how do you use that to motivate you or inspire you in a positive way to become a better version of yourself. So I'm really glad you shared that. I'm curious to get your response to this question. We asked this quite a bit, is if you had to define yourself, but you could only choose one word, what word did you pick?
If I had to define myself, and only, I like to think value. By value, I mean, and this is a really tough question. So now I'm going to give you the context of that word. And that is, when I develop content or when I train in my business, what I try to deliver is value. Try to personify value. If you gave me two words, I would say, because I used to say content, but I would say cool content, right? Because, when I'm creating stuff, I'm always trying to create cool content. Cool meaning, hey, watch me deliver this in a cool way that you'll like it. But it's really heavy content. Those are the two words that really define me. When people ask me about my speaking style, I say, dude, cool content. I'm cool the way I deliver it. Dude, you're going to love the content. And you're going, okay, I get it. But if you add those two up, it's real value because there's an entertainment value and then there's an educational value. So value would be my word. That was a tough one. I've never had anybody put me on the spot like that.
All right.
That's so unfair, Chris.
I like it. So one of the things we truly have a lot of value in is the power of books. And I want to ask you a question, and you can't answer with one of yours, but I'm curious if you've read anything recently or perhaps you're currently reading something that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I read, there's two books, and I'm going to screw up the title because they're very similar. But one is Made to Stick and Making It Stick. One is by the Heath brothers, and the other one is by a lady, I don't remember her name. But those two books, because I'm really into the Heath brothers talked about, and I think it's Made to Stick, is how do you make something memorable, right? How do you create that viral concept that people go, I remember that. The Made to Stick, if I got it right, is all about memory and how do you keep it in somebody's brain once they leave your presence. And you know what I mean? I think that those two books, those are the last two books, well, 3 or 4 books back, are the two books I read. And I love those two because one is about how do you create stories that are memorable. The other one is like, how do you keep it in their brain when you're no longer with them? And that was, because I'm all about memory now, Chris, in the sense that our ability to predict what we want to do or whether we should do something or not is usually based on memory. If you've had a bad experience, bad memories, right? You get scared to do things in the future because your brain in the present predicts that it's not going to go well. Yeah, I don't know if you ever thought about that way, but it's like you go back as you're standing in the present to figure out what you're going to do in the future. And if you had bad memory, then your prediction is going to be it's not going to go that well. Well, I tried that in the past. It didn't work out. Therefore, I shouldn't do that. And what we have to do is in the present, question that memory in terms of context, time, and what we know now. So, for example, I'm not good with technology. Well, let's think about that. If you challenge yourself, you go, I always tell people when they say, I'm not good with technology, I say, that is a nice iPhone you have there. Very nice iPhone, right? And because what I'm doing is challenging their paradigm, their schema, their thought process. And so Those two books are very important to me. One is about storytelling. That's the Heath brothers. And the other one is about memory, which is, I feel so bad that I don't remember her name.
I appreciate that. And for me, it's not only a question for our listeners, but it's also a selfish question because I always get a ton of awesome information. That's something that I stole from John Maxwell. He asks that to everybody that he has lunch with or coffee with. And I think it's a really good way of seeing what else is out there. So I'm glad that you touch on those.
Hey, Chris, can I brag? Can I brag just a little bit?
You can 100% brag.
Dude, did I tell you, not only did I share the stage with John Maxwell, he let me interview him backstage. I have a great subject clip with him, man. That guy is an awesome guy. Oh, by the way, there's the onstage persona, John Maxwell, and then there's the backstage, what's happened persona, and both are in line. And so I just want to confirm that because sometimes you say, that phrase goes, you never want to meet your idols, right? Like, not true. I've met Zig Ziglar as well. I've met, Og Mandino, and I've met John Maxwell, even Les Brown, people like that. Mel Robbins, another great person. Cool people when you meet them. And I just want to highlight that I noticed that a lot of the great speakers, like if we could look at the speaking business as a pyramid, I've noticed that as you move towards the apex of that pyramid, there you find the most coolest, secure people ever. They have nothing to prove. It's somewhere in the middle or lower tiers of the actual pyramid, people try to move up, where you find a lot of insecurities. And so anyway, just a random thought I had because when you mentioned John Maxwell, I was like, man, this guy is the ultimate and cool.
That is a very interesting analogy of that, but I think it's so true. Is people often look to prove things, and I think when you're trying to prove things, what you end up doing is, I think, missing your message or missing that opportunity. So I'm glad that you shared that. So if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself only one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't be so hard on yourself. I have the same answer for that same question, but don't be so hard on yourself because when you're young, you just start, you criticize yourself too much because you don't know any better. We all make mistakes. And then the thing is, I forgot what that saying is, don't let your past mistake be your present situation or context. And we too often let that happen. You know what I mean? We made a mistake when we were 21. But it's amazing how those early memories, going back to memory, form our thinking still today. Why is something that happened when I was 15 or 16 still messing with me today? Why is something that happened in high school still messing with me? We have this persistent image of what used to be, when in reality, we've changed. And if I can give you a quick story, this is a true story. When I was in high school, there was this guy. His name was, we'll just call him Bob. How's that? We'll change his name. Bob, right? Bob was a real jerk. One could say, by today's definition, he was the ultimate bully, right? I was like this skinny pencil kid, neck kid, skinny kid. And he was always on me, picking on me just wouldn't stop, right? And I hated that guy. Just when I say hated, I mean like that. I mean, really, I'm using the word hate with intent here, right? And I remember about 10 years ago, I was invited to speak at my high school, right? So I go back to my high school to speak. Principal like, hey, come back and speak, inspire people, look at your success, blah, blah, blah. Sure. And I remember I was walking towards the auditorium because I knew where it was. So I got my hall pass, walking to the auditorium, and I see the janitor coming the other way, all green outfit. And I was going to ask him if I was still on the line. And as I get close to this guy, he's like, Victor. And I'm like, what? And as he got closer, it was him. He was the janitor at the school, right? But the story's not about him being a janitor. There's no wrong with being a janitor. That's not the story. But it was like, what's up? This and that. He goes on and on. He goes, I knew you were going to be here. I was kind of waiting for you. That goes through the whole thing, right? And I'm like, and he's like my fan, like a fanboy now, right? I go inside the auditorium. We get all set. And as I take the stage, I see off to the right, he's sitting there standing against the wall. Got the biggest grin. Like, dude, I know that guy. You know what I mean? And he's like and then afterwards he was just like, he's talking about his family, the whole thing. And I remember leaving there going, this is what's wrong, is that I had an image of him that I had frozen in time and I still had it with me 20, 25 years later, right? But the moment is, and I want to say his name, Bob was a totally different person now. And what he showed me that day when he started talking about his family, I said, the guy's changed. I said, but yet I still had this image of him. And to the audience listening, how many images are you still carrying around about people who really don't exist anymore? Those were the insecure days. way back when. And that was a highlight for me. You know what I mean? It was like a moment like, wow, I really got to get rid of these images. Of all these images I have of people, that was 20-year-old images, some of it. Anyway, thought I'd share that story.
It's an extremely powerful story, and I think to your point, it's the true definition of people changing over time. We have those images not only of other people but also of ourselves, and you talked about it before about the mindset of, well, I did this a year or two ago and it didn't work and I wasn't successful. You still have that same image. It's a different context, but it's the same perspective of, I didn't do well, I didn't succeed, so now there's no way I could do it now. It is a really interesting story. I appreciate you sharing that with us. So if I could offer you dinner with absolutely anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Prince. The artist formerly known as Prince.
I'm
such a Prince fan.
I'm going to share this with you because it's very funny, but Brant Menswar, the author and speaker, he was on my podcast recently. He's the last one I actually interviewed, and he said Prince as well. So I'm 2 for 2 with the last two interviews for Prince.
That's funny because when he passed away, I had not heard. My niece called me up and says, "Are you all right?" I go, "What do you mean I'm all right?" "Well, are you okay?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, Prince." I go, "What about Prince?" He goes, "Well, he passed away." I go, and I just had to almost hang up the phone. I went into a 24-hour funk. I was the guy that had his posters all over my wall back in the day. And so I think he's a musical genius. I think he was our Beethoven, our Mozart, and we didn't know it. And he got his music library, the amount of instruments he can play, and I think he was so detached from trying to give the music industry what they wanted. He wanted to do it his way. And I really dug that about him. You know what I mean? So yeah, it would be a great conversation to have with him.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time in so many ways. The analogy I use with Prince is for basketball listeners. Pistol Pete Maravich was far ahead of his time. He in the 70s and 80s, he's doing things that players are doing now. His ability to score and where he shot from. I think Prince was the same in that way. And to your point, all the different instruments he could play and how he could do it. So I'm glad that you shared that. So we're going to switch over to what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have of you is that you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, I hate you, but go ahead, man.
Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Meatloaf.
Favorite smell?
My wife's neck. Sorry, this is true.
Favorite sport?
I would say basketball.
Do you have a favorite team?
No.
All-time favorite movie?
Citizen Kane, Orson Welles.
Do you have a favorite author?
Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead.
What is your favorite app you have use on your phone?
Boss Jock.
What is the background picture on your phone?
My wife and my dog and I.
Do you have an all-time favorite book?
All-time favorite book? Yeah, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
And do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Quote, never aim for perfection, aim for success. I got that one down.
It's a fantastic quote. So for our listeners that would like to follow up with you and find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do so? And are you also active on social media?
I'm all over social media. So if you just type in Victor Antonio, at Victor Antonio everywhere, you'll find me. If I can invite your listeners, I have a live stream that I do 3 times a week. It's called Sales After Dark. And so I go on live 9 p.m. Eastern, and I do about maybe 15, 20 minutes of content, and I take questions from the audience. If you want to hang out with Victor, Sales After Dark, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 9 Eastern time.
I love it. And they can find all that on your social media?
Yep. You can hunt me down. I even got a Wikipedia page now. How's that for Yeah.
And the last question I have for you is the same question I have for everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
I'm gonna give you something that's totally not related to sales, which is what I'm all about. I did a show on Spike TV called Life or Debt. I don't know if you knew that. So I'm the host of a television show called Life or Debt. If you go on Amazon or Hulu, you'll find it's called Life or Debt, like you owe something. And it's a show that didn't get picked up for a second season, and it should have, but it was more like timing than anything else. And it's a great show because what it is, I work with families who are struggling financially. And what I do is I spend a whole week with them, 5 days, and I shift their brain, shift their mindset, make them understand numbers, give them a plan to get out of debt, right? And then I come back in 90 days, to see how they're doing. By the way, I don't just give them a plan. I also give them tools. So if you're going through bankruptcy, I find you a lawyer. I got friends. If you need, software applications, we got some of those. Whatever you need, I give you to help you come out of that. And, I know that today, and some of you that might be listening are struggling with that. And, it's a great show. And I wish there were more shows like that, because I give some great strategies. And it's not because my show, by the way, I get paid no commissions. I get nothing from the show, right? But it's such a great show because I think it helps a lot of people personally who might be struggling out there and trying to get their financial act together. And just be warned that the Victor you hear here is not the Victor that shows up on TV. I'm a little tougher. I'm like, if you know who John Taffer is from Bar Rescue, he gets in people's faces. That's kind of what I do. The Chicago side comes out a little bit. And so it's an exciting show, but I think it's one of those things that, how you do something in your life you're very proud of. I'm very proud of that show because it's helped so many people get out of financial debt. And I get so many emails, and it's really, it's very heartwarming to get that. So hopefully somebody will benefit from that listening to this.
I appreciate that. And you said they could find it on Amazon. Where else?
Hulu. If you just type in Life or Debt, Victor Antonio, you'll even see previews of the show on YouTube. So just check it out. But it's like $1 or $2 an episode, whatever it is. But the content in there is so good to help people really climb out of debt. And I studied all the greats, by the way. So I studied Dave Ramsey. I got to interview Sue Zorman about 2 months ago, so I got to hang out with her. So I really took the best of the best and really try to imbue it within the show. And I think it's a great show that helps people.
I appreciate that. Well, listen, Victor, I really appreciate you sharing what you did. Your parting words were very different than what I thought you were going to go with, but I definitely recommend it, especially during these challenging times. I know a lot of people are struggling financially. So thank you not only for your time, also your advice, and hopefully our listeners will connect with you, follow you, and also check out Life or Debt. So thank you again, and I know that you and I will get a chance to connect again soon.
All right. No quit living, brother. No quit living. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to episode number 297. Victor is quite a guy, and it's clear that he enjoys what he does and is passionate about helping others. Victor shared a quote with us that really hit me. Never aim for perfection, aim for success. I think that is a powerful quote that we all should take a second to think about. So my question to you today is just that. Do you aim for success, or are you going after perfection? And remember, we rise by lifting others up.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.